Hey everybody, and welcome to another episode of Magic with Zuby. My name is Zuby, and if you're brand new to the show is all about a little well-known card game called Magic the Gathering. So today we brought on none other than AdamAntMTG, who is a partner Twitch streamer on Twitch and streams Magic Arena, and brought him on to talk about, how to get into streaming, what it's like to grow as a content creator, and really some new tips for new people out there as well, too, how to really grow your stream and gain an audience as well, too. And plus, then we talked a lot about Magic and D&D and RPGs and whatever else have you. But before we begin, let's get some announcements out of the way. This podcast is brought to you by legitmtg.com. Legitmtg.com is your place to buy Magic singles and sealed product out there. Any order over $2 or more gives you free shipping at legitmtg.com, as well as Magic with Zuby can be found on iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, TuneIn Radio, and Spotify. You can reach out to me on Twitter at Magic with Zuby, on Instagram at magic_with_Zuby, and you can email me at mtgzuby@gmail.com. I did start a TikTok. I haven't uploaded any videos or anything yet on it. I don't even really know what to do with it, but I started one because my oldest daughter has a TikTok, so I decided to make a TikTok as well too. But before we begin, let's just begin. Without further ado, here is AdamAntMTG. And get going. So, hey everybody, Zuby here, and I brought on today with me none other than Keith, aka AdamAntMTG, who is a pretty popular Twitch streamer. So let's go ahead and introduce yourself, Adam.
Hey, good to be here, AdamAntMTG. My first name is Keith, and not many people know that because typically I don't mention that in my chat. But if anyone wants to call me Adam, Keith, Adamant, I go by anything. Just say, hey, you, and I will respond. But it's great to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
Yeah, no problem. So I put out a tweet asking, hey, who are some content creators I should get on the podcast? And I think it was Skybills, who I had on the show a couple weeks ago, actually recommended, or no, you responded saying you wanted to come on, then Skybills said she recommended you.
Awesome.
So then you DM'd me, and then now it's been a couple weeks, and now we're finally doing this. I guess one of my first questions I wanted to ask is, do you primarily just stream?
Yeah. I tried my hand in content creating on YouTube. I'll tell you the little background if you don't mind me going
Sure.
into a long, elaborate story, as streamers sometimes do. My journey into content creation, one of the reasons I have a hard time doing YouTube content is because it's structured in the way that I would need to edit and go back. And if any of your audience knows, if you've ever set up an answering machine message where you're supposed to just say, hey, it's me, leave me a message, thanks, and that's it. Well, I do that about 75 times because I always want to edit. I didn't say it right, and I'll change it and edit it again and again. So if I'm doing something live, there's no way I can edit it. So whatever I mispronounce, or if I say something wrong, or I just go with it because I know I can't correct it. If you give me an opportunity to actually produce something, and I will never get it off the ground. So kudos to all the YouTube content creators that are able to be comfortable and happy with their results and not constantly want to change it and edit and change. And so the few times I've done YouTube, I just clip something from a stream and put it up. Recording and is just really hard for me because I always want to redo it and make it better. So I guess that's sort of why streaming is just, I kind of forget about it. I do my thing and I'm done. I don't go back and chop it up or make compilations and all those things that would be really fun to do. But I don't have a hard time being okay with the finished product. Like I need to ship it to someone and say, you do it, you edit it, and I'll trust you.
No, I definitely understand that feeling. I tried my hand at doing YouTube videos as well. And it's just like you said, it's not only the editing gets so time consuming, it's coming up with ideas, and just having my biggest factor is time to do it. And it can be a lot of fun, it can be rewarding, but it can be so draining as well too. That's why I prefer podcasts, because it's just sort of I record and then pretty much done. I do some finishing touches on the audio, and that's about it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a different medium where it's, I don't know, more, I mean, I guess genuine in a sense that, you're not editing. Like, I would be the greatest Magic player in the world if I could edit only my victories and show everybody how brilliant I am. And instead, on stream, I end up, fumbling into really terrible, lines of play. And then, it's natural and it's good in one sense, but sometimes people are used to a high percentage, you're used to things that are polished. And when you don't see that polished, it gives you the genuine experience of the Magic, player, where you have ups and downs and good luck and bad luck, and you see all of it when you're streaming. And sometimes that's great for some people, and some people come in and they're instantly like, "You made a mistake. I'm out." You're like, "Wow,
Oh, I know,
that's
right?
pretty harsh." But yeah, I've been streaming for just under 2 years. So I'll be 2 years in April.
Oh,
And
nice.
Magic Arena is my primary game. I've occasionally gone to other games just to try it out, but the audience isn't really there and the engagement isn't there because if I'm playing like a shooter or RPG or doing something else, I'm focused on that. I'm not just bantering. With Magic, I've played so much over the years, I can kind of banter and talk about the plays, and it just feels more comfortable because I feel I've done it for so long that I can. I think the experience is good for streaming, while other things maybe not. I'm not so much of a screamer, or like if I do a horror game or a jump scare game or something, I don't have that personality that lends to a fantastic experience. So I don't know if I'd ever be good at those types of games on stream. So I don't know. It's to me, it's interesting, the different personalities and what attracts people. For me, I started streaming kind of low key, just like my regular personality, and that my audience appreciates that, while other streamers can be a little more, excitable and more interesting for the entertainment aspect. I think of myself as someplace you can just relax and maybe learn something about Magic and just have a good time in a casual sort of environment.
No, and that's good because just like you said, it's playing to your strengths and finding out, what is good for you. Because I'll be honest, a lot of times where I stream very rarely, and it's not very scheduled. It's just pretty much when I want to. And one of the things I notice is I almost feel like sometimes you have to put yourself on, like put a show on for people. And sometimes that can be exhausting, especially, after I just got done with work and whatever. And a lot of times with streaming is you sort of have to at least be engaging, talk your plays out and talk with the audience. And then times where I just don't want to, and, and that can be a little bit tough too, especially if you try to put on a personality like that. No, but the few times I've caught your stream, it does feel very relaxed. And the thing with streaming Magic is it sort of lends itself to talking with the chat, because they can not only help you with plays, but say if you're doing a draft, like, hey, pick this instead.
Right.
And, maybe help you see some lines of play that you didn't see before.
Absolutely. Yeah. I really feel that always being open to conversation or open to different ideas, because Magic is such a diverse and amazing game. There are often there's so many different lines of, be it just math or the feeling of what you should expect from a certain deck or a certain line of play, or when your opponent is doing something and you're confused by it, like, why would they play this instead of that? And you might not see something that someone else can help you with. And I think the engagement with chat, be it new players or experienced players, is always great, because you can't have those conversations in paper Magic, at least not in tournaments where you're playing and you're saying, I wonder, the open conversation you can have on stream is really a way to bring everybody in. And everyone's always doing that, backseat gaming or something like, in a environment like that's being like a Grand Prix or World Championship. Something's being said. Everyone's always throwing their 2 cents in without true feedback. when you're on stream and you're playing and those people are doing the same thing, I actually embrace backseat gaming. I think it's fine as long as it's done, of course, in a constructive way, but not just constructive, but explaining, the reasons. Like, this card is bad. Well, why do you say that? Why,
Yeah.
or this line of play is bad or good. I always encourage the conversation, and sometimes there are multiple ways to the same goal. I didn't attack this turn because I knew that I would set up lethal next turn. If I would have attacked with everything this turn, I could have fallen into a trap, or my opponent could, potentially Ember Cleave and swing back and I lose the game. So maybe this time caution is better. And then you end up playing it through. They didn't have the Ember Cleave and you could have had lethal the turn before, but it's hindsight. But I do like the conversation, like say something, say out loud what you think I did wrong. And I'll either explain myself or I'll admit that I was wrong. It's not a big deal to me to be wrong. But you're right when you said about being exhausted. There are times where you don't want to necessarily play Magic explain all your plays. Maybe you're trying to accomplish some goal for a quest or something, and it is. What I've learned in streaming is that ultimately it's 100%. You can see the viewers either rise or decline based on your mood, your attitude. There's been times where I've been on top of the world, everything's going really well, and I can feel the momentum. I can feel the, how it feels great to have a good positive chat, be interacting. The games are working well, everything's kind of smoothly going. And then other times where I've been frustrated or my mind's been on other things, and I'll see that there isn't that same engagement. So I think it's pretty cool that the streaming environment lets you very quickly, find yourself and find what works for you.
Yeah, no, for sure. One thing I do want to ask you, so you mentioned you've been doing this for almost 2 years. You're currently partnered with Twitch, correct?
Mm-hmm. Yes, I am.
So and one of the things that I mentioned in that tweet was there's just so many Magic content creators coming out now. With the release of Arena, it sort of exploded, right? Because before Arena, when it was just Magic Online, there was very few Magic streamers out there. And you sort of knew who was who, and even minus the streamers, you really knew a lot of the YouTubers out there, the podcasters. I felt like I had a handle on sort of the who's who of everyone for content creation. But now, pretty much, I don't know who anybody is anymore. It's getting to a point to where, I found this one YouTuber, I don't remember their name, but they had like 30,000 subs, and I think they're primarily a streamer, and I had no idea who they were, and they're not in that circle of people I follow, obviously. And you sort of look at the front page of Twitch or the page, the Magic the Gathering page on Twitch, and there's just so many new people out there. For people who are wanting to get into streaming now, especially just focusing on Magic Arena, what's some advice you can give them out there?
It's a great question, and it's actually a pretty interesting story. I started 2 years ago, and it was not there was never like a ramping up. I didn't do a lot of research on what streaming even was. Obviously, I watched a few streamers doing other things, but they were mostly podcasts and like watching D&D, streams. That's really what got me sort of into the technology, and I got my streaming software with the intention of doing a Dungeons and Dragons.
We're gonna have to talk some D&D soon.
Yeah. So I'm a longtime D&D player, long before Magic even. I started Magic in '93, but I was playing D&D prior to that.
All right, I got to make a note of that because we will definitely have to talk some D&D. But
awesome.
Go on.
Yeah. So we'll definitely get into that because it's really what kind of brought me to this place that we are now. So with regard to streaming, so I jumped into it sort of, it was like sort of a secondary thought. I was teaching my friend, my best friend Scott, who has been on before, and he's the only VIP in my channel. For those of you who want to be VIPs, you have to know me since I was 12, and that's my criteria. Anyways, so Scott and I was streaming just to show him the game and give him some tips while he was learning from scratch. He had never touched the game. And that suddenly I just had more and more people come in. And because I was teaching, I would just tell people, oh, I'm just here to teach my friend how to play Magic. And they're like, oh, what's Magic? And it was early beta arena. I get in on the program like I think the first wave or the second wave, pretty early.
Nice.
And so I was just kind of doing my thing and just talking to him through plays. And suddenly it started growing. People started asking more questions, and new players would come in and what's this? And how do you do this? And eventually even was, at that time, it was really a small group of people. So some of the staff from Wizards, Chris Clay, who's the number one designer, lead designer, he would come into the chat. And of course they were trying to, kind of feel out the community and get some, traction under their brand new game. And I don't think they even believed it would be as big as it was, or it became. Because I was in early and I was doing a lot of networking, in the sense of visiting other streams, seeing what people did that I liked. So to kind of back up to your question, what are some good tips for new streamers? Well, that's the number one thing, is find out what people are doing, find out what the popular people are doing. And it's not about copying them, or it's just about seeing what their formula is. And their formula typically is engagement. That's the number one thing that streaming is so unique than other forms of entertainment, is you're not just doing something while people are watching, you're doing something and you're interacting with the viewers. They want you to play a certain deck. You can tell them yes or no. You can do what you want on your stream. But if there's enough people asking for something, maybe you should, talk to them about it and give them, and there's a lot of people that enjoy limited. And that's not my favorite way of playing, but I do have, an opinion on limited play and why I don't play as much limited as other streamers. And if anything, I'll direct them to streamers that do play a lot of limited. And because I don't believe you can be everything for everybody. You have to do or provide content that you're comfortable with and that you enjoy. But there's nothing wrong with, talking about it. And so just find your audience and find what you like to do. Be genuine in that. If you want to be the number one constructed player, then go for it. If you want to be a great limited stream and that's all you want to do, just let your audience know and be, listen to what they like. Because maybe something that you're doing that they, they'll help you. They'll tell you what they want you to do and what they think is great. And I think that engagement is the number one tip. The second tip, but probably one of the more important ones, is to have your setup tested and have a good mic, have when people are listening to you and they're listening to you through a headset microphone plugged into your USB and it's scratchy or grindy or doesn't have let someone that you trust, a friend of yours, listen to you from across, from a actual, not from the same room you're in. Have them listen to you on Twitch and let them, be honest with you about your quality. If your quality isn't up to speed, you might want to find out a way to address it, because that's the first thing someone will make an impression and they'll never come back if they don't like your the way that your music is too loud or whatever.
So, you also stream without a webcam. And how important do you feel that having a webcam or not having a webcam is important? Like, do you find that to be important for people to see your face? I mean, with your success, have you ever had a webcam? Let me start.
No, never have. But it's a really interesting thing, and I think that in some ways it does improve, because what I was talking about, connection. The connection is people looking at you, even though it's micro expressions, but there are some very important qualities of human interaction that have to do with webcams or seeing someone. And I don't think that's not lost on me for sure. However, the interesting tale is that I was studying, and I still am studying, voice acting. Been doing that for maybe 4 or 5 years now.
Nice.
And that the entire art of voice acting is how to express yourself as an actor in audio only. and either and because that was a skill that I wanted to keep improving on, one of the very first things that that you learn is to use your voice as the communicator, and that's takes a lot of practice and skill to do that. So bringing in it's one of those things where the same thing for on camera acting, there are still ways to engage the camera, and I think that maybe some people are put off by a no cam streamer. I think they like to see that interaction. For me, there's a couple of reasons. One is obviously I want to focus on my voice. Secondly, I think it can be distracting for Magic, specifically, because there's not really a situation in Magic where my facial expression is going to convey anything. It's not like you have to have a face cam, because Magic, I guess it can be exciting. You can top deck some great cards, and that expression is good. But for me, I'm a low key person anyway, so it doesn't add to my stream to see my eyes get big, or I'm not throwing my headset off and jumping around. So I don't really know what people would get out of cam for my personal style. So for me, it's good. However, if it's something that that I think it's probably going to add more to someone's stream. So if you have a choice and you don't want to stream cam, I don't think you have to be successful on Twitch. However, I do think that more people expect it, and maybe even more, I think maybe people expect it. So I would say go that way if it makes you comfortable, but ultimately it's what you want to do.
Okay, that's some good advice. The other thing that I sort of want to, I guess, ask you is, growing your audience. It felt like you sort of started at that perfect time with Arena, where it was the open beta or the closed beta, whichever part of the beta it was.
Closed. Yeah.
The closed beta. That's right. And you're right. At the time, there weren't a whole lot of streamers doing it, but for someone entering now with so many Magic Arena streamers, what are some other ways that you could give some advice to grow the audience? Because a lot of times now, especially with a game like this, there's so many people doing it at the same time. How do you grab that sort of share of the audience when?
Yeah.
I mean, I know a lot of times it also kind of depends when you stream, because everybody's going to go towards like the top streamers first off. They're never going to go to the bottom where there's only one or two viewers and all that. So what's some advice for someone like that?
Yeah, that's great. Great questions. I think the I've been through ups and downs with regards to schedules and things like that. I had some really great opportunities early, and it's double-edged sword, I guess. Great opportunities, and then I was unemployed for a while. So what that gave me is more time throughout the day to find an audience in different time zones. One thing is to not be limited by your time zone, for sure, because people from all over the world will stop by my stream, from Australia to Germany to, literally it's global, and people will spend their mornings with me, or they'll spend their evenings with me, and whenever they have time. And at one point my schedule was so much more wide open. I attracted people from so many different time zones, and then once you get someone, they'll try to find you again. They'll put their notifications on, but some people are like, hey, it's 6 a.m. and I just woke up, but I've got things to do, or I have a job or whatever. So I think you have to be willing to accept that there's going to be potentially a global audience that you can reach. So that's number one. And that means that you have to find a time where that global audience, maybe there's another popular streamer who starts their stream or ends their stream, and it is about finding that time that works best. But because there's so many streamers now, I think there's well over 800, which is pretty remarkable, because when the first streamer event, there was way less than 100 streamers, and they were reaching out to people that were not typically Magic streamers. They were bringing in, they were attracting as many gamers as they could, as many personalities.
I remember that.
Yeah. And so it was interesting because, they wanted the exposure ultimately to the audience that these other gamers had. And some of the gamers were, longtime Magic players, but they never wanted to, they weren't interested necessarily in streaming it, or they came from MTGO or whatever. But I think I guess for my story was I did start at a smaller pool of streamers, so I did get kind of grabbed a chunk of the audience. But where I felt things really changed is when they brought the MPL in. They had contracts with, however many was it 60 or 30? I don't remember how many.
It was like 32, I think, or
yeah, it might have been 32, 64. I couldn't remember the exact number.
I can't remember either.
But it might have been 32 people, which they gave them. They were like, "Hey, you're a streamer now." It was part of their contract, and it was very different. Some of them embraced it. Some of them were already into streaming and they already knew kind of how to approach it. Others just sat in front of their camera and played Magic and didn't say a word. And it was interesting because I'm from the paper competitive Magic, and it's a very different world within streaming it. So, but that took that was a huge chunk of the viewer, the audience or the viewership that we're now going towards, world champions. And why wouldn't they watch a world champion play,
Yeah, that's true.
So I felt like that was a big change. Now, when I got partnered, my momentum was really high. My numbers were really kind of mind blowing. I didn't even expect it, to be honest with you, because I had known other Magic streamers and other streamers that were doing it for years, saying that, it's just you get on the mic and you talk to your audience, sometimes nobody, and you just keep doing it. And that's what I did. I loved it for what I was doing, and I loved when a new player would come in and say, "Hey, I'm learning Magic," and that was what I was all about. So I had a little bit of a different approach than just, I wasn't me playing Magic, it was me talking about Magic to players. And I would always ask them questions about what got you into the game, and it was just it felt like a place for someone to kind of talk about their Magic journey, talk about what got them into it, and then all of a sudden I was making Magic friends online, and my viewership was going, just kept climbing, and it was climbing at a rate that I didn't really expect. I got partnered pretty quickly, and then just after that is when the MPL came in. So I think that a lot of things fell into place perfectly. So I don't think that my talent or my ability to, I wasn't trying to figure out how to be big. I was just doing things naturally. So as far as advice, like specific advice on how do you grow in an environment, is I don't even really know. I didn't have a plan. Now there's things I would have done differently, and things that I recognize now are sort of shortcomings that I can talk about. Sure, because I think my growth, I think I could have taken a different trajectory had I paid attention to some things. One of the things is pay attention to not being afraid to monetize your content, because and that's one of the things that people in general struggle with when they're getting into something new, is they always feel this underconfidence of, well, I'm not big yet, or I'm not as good as someone else, so I'm not going to monetize my content. Like let's say doing simply something like deck techs. There's a person in my chat that says, "Hey, I'm new. Can you look at my my deck of a whole bunch of cards I threw together?" And you look at it and you go, "Eek, you've got a lot of different things going on here. Can we talk about that?" And they are getting genuinely advice. They're getting advice. They're getting information to help their deck improve. And if they're willing to listen, some people aren't. Some people just want to show you their stuff, and then they get mad when you ask them questions about it. But I try to be open with that. I try to say, okay, what are you trying to do, and where's your thinking with these card selections and choices? And again, I'm not trying to be, I've had more experience, so I'm going to tell you what to do. Yeah. But I want to maybe unlock the way of thinking and say, if you're trying to accomplish a creature-based deck, well, you only have 12 creatures. They're good creatures, but maybe you need to figure out, how to, if your main objective is to attack with creatures, you need to put more in, and maybe we can look at your mana curve and the types of creatures that synergize well, and have that conversation. So they go, okay, I see where I want my deck to go, and then you can come to a conclusion together. But still, that's time consuming. One, not everybody in the chat might be interested in that conversation, and there's nothing wrong with the streamer saying, hey, for a small donation, or whatever you want to set up your a pay structure. Now, some people are turned off by that because they think it's a paywall. I think that if I was interested in learning a new game, and I ask someone who is a streamer for a certain advice that's very specific to me, if it's not just a casual conversation, maybe it is worth asking for something for that, because that is value, and value should be. I think value at some point it should be okay to ask, but I've never done that. And I think that looking back at a pay structure, there's also some like value to like some sort of a queue where you say, okay, everybody, like Knox does a brew queue where he sets up, if you want your deck to be played on stream by him, then he's going to put you in a queue, and there's going to be a certain structure to that.
Yeah,
and I think that's good. I don't think there's any problem with that. But new streamers will often not want to do that, and again, I've never have, and I think that's something that I would have changed much earlier, and develop some sort of a program, a tier list, some way to offer value to people who want to pay, and still offer something for people who just want to come in and chill out, because they can still observe all that and gain knowledge and information. But does that make sense? I mean,
yeah, no, for sure.
And I don't think it gets talked about either. It's people a lot of times don't want to throw these things out there because they feel the audience will be upset. Because I know if I suddenly said, hey, we're going to do brew queues and stuff, I think my audience would be surprised because I've never done it. So that it would be a shock. It would be like, oh, well, now we have to pay for that? That's weird. And it might turn people off. It might get more people interested to put their brews up and be excited about, on Wednesday, I'm going to, showcase your deck. Maybe it gets more excitement. I really don't know how it would turn out, but I think it would be more positive than negative.
Yeah, you bring up a good point, which is monetization, because it's sort of a weird subject, because now that actual content creation can be a viable career in sorts, it's not only, I mean, it's just like being in the entertainment industry, being an actor or anything like that, right? Trying to be a comedian, it's viable but really hard to get started.
Right.
You sort of look at the path of a comedian; they're not going to make any money for years and years unless they're like super funny right off the bat and they're perfect at comedy, right?
Right.
And same with streamers. And not just streamers, but just content creators. Unless you hit the lottery and make that viral video or that viral stream somehow, you're more than likely gonna just keep chugging along with little to nothing to show for it. And I'm not saying that's everybody, but it's a good chunk, because I think a lot of people expect, the YouTube money or the Twitch money will just come easily to them.
No,
and it's not. It's a tough journey. Like, if that is your goal and you have the time and patience for that, more power to you. But I think a lot of people are misconstrued, or there's this misconception that it's easy to get into, and they think it's going to happen quickly.
That's exactly it. It's really something that I've observed over the years, and it's one of the things that I do, if you're not aware, is I'm very open to self-promotion in my channel. I always let people know, hey, if you stream and if you have YouTube content, or you do anything, I don't even limit it to Magic or anything. It's if you have something that you want to share, I tell them, drop links in my chat, and it's brought me a lot of really interesting attention, because some people, and I know where the intentions are pretty quickly, and I trust that the audience does as well. So I never protect myself in the bubble of, if you're here, this is what you're here for. It's me. I'm the most important thing in the room.
Yeah.
I say that if anyone wants to give this a shot, be a streamer, get out there. I encourage them to try, because it is very difficult. And I always make it very clear that the audience will make it really. They'll make a decision really quickly whether you're the person or you're not the person. If they're ever going to watch you again, it's usually done very quickly. So while I suggest people try it, and I promote anyone who comes to my channel, although I don't endorse everyone because I don't always get a chance to see their streams, right?
Yeah.
Their content might not be something that I enjoy, but I don't believe that I should shield anybody necessarily from the opportunity. If you want to be, any type of stream you want to throw out there, do it and see if your audience catches on. Like you said, comedians, there's a lot of comedians. The most successful ones are the ones that really get comfortable with their material, and it makes it so genuine, and it connects to the audience, and the audience gets every joke. They're on the same wavelength. Everything is brilliant. That comfortable comedian that just seems like they're just talking about their life on the stage, they've most likely practiced that so often that it seems natural, but it's the farthest thing from natural, because they've written and edited and changed those jokes and the deliveries over and over. And that is something, we as streamers, I mean, I've probably said the same thing over and over. Sometimes my delivery is higher energy or lower energy, and sometimes I feel like, oh, I nailed it. That analogy was really perfect and crisp at that time. And then I say the same thing over again, 3 streams later with maybe a different delivery or a different, and I do, intentionally think, what's working, what's not working. I'm kind of editing myself, constantly and trying to improve my delivery on things. But it's really interesting how the people that come into my stream who are like really excited that I'm offering the opportunity to self-promote, and then other ones will just disappear and I'll never see them streaming again. I don't know what, I think being not necessarily consistent, but being, having a schedule or getting out there over and over and over, and not taking one stream as a win or a lose, or one stream as you're going to have bad days or you're going to have a bad interaction with chat. How does the next time that occurs, how do you handle it, and how do you improve your your product, I guess, for all intents and purposes. And to feed off of that, the other thing is it is a product. It is you're delivering something. And I think with that, people don't typically think of it in the way that if you were running a business, a brick and mortar business, like a store of whatever sort, if your mind is in the same place as if my stream is my store or my shop or, where I deliver my product, then you have to think of every customer who walks in, how do you approach them? So like, those retail stores where you walk in and there's always a greeter and they're like, hey, can I help you? And you're like, whoa, I've been attacked. Like you feel like someone is right there. A lot of people don't like that. However, even though we say, oh, I'm just looking, as soon as you go into a store and there's nobody, you're instantly like, could I get some help? You're looking around. Like, acknowledgement is important, even though maybe it feels uncomfortable. So when you see that person drop in your chat and they say hi, as soon as you see that and say, hey, how's it going? And welcome to the stream. And then start maybe a little bit of that new customer banter. What we do here is we sell shirts. And if you have any questions on shirts, come on by, or, ask me. And then you open the door to their feeling, okay, I've been seen, I'm acknowledged. So it's like there's so many little tidbits on how to grow and how to improve, and sorry if I'm kind of off on tangents.
No, that's fine. It's fine. I think it's all really good information. It's good to hear, someone who has, a lot of people will say, quote unquote, made it, because there's a lot of people's, desire to become a Twitch partner, and
True.
It's, sort of like the top of the mountain for them. And,
right.
But it's still a lot of work, though.
Yeah, absolutely. Goals are very important. And to keep your eye on what's working and what's not working. I think that there's a lot of room for improvement for me personally, where I could be. And I've learned that from when I was saying back before about some of the top streamers, they work really hard, and they work hard off stream as well. they get their engagements, and when they go to TwitchCon, they're not just there to have a good time. They're there to make connections and set up appointments, and those are sort of the things. The amount of effort and the amount of the ability to kind of present yourself in a way that your sponsors are going to be attracted to you, to your product, and then therefore you spiral into more and more sponsorships. And you have to be professional. You have to understand that there's a two-way street, and you have to be careful not to get taken advantage of. And at the same time, you want to be respectful of your sponsors and what they want you to do or what they want you to represent. So as long as you're really kind of genuine to yourself and where you're going with your sponsorships and your partners that you make, I think it is a lot of hard work, and it's a lot of work that people don't expect. And unfortunately too is there's the age gap, the youth and people that expect something to fall their way because they've achieved something that they think is valuable. I think the important thing is to realize where the value actually is. Is it because sometimes what you think is valuable is not what not what the sponsorships or the other side is, valuing. So to be really aware of your place in the business scheme, and ultimately it comes down to advertising and the amount of people you're going to attract. That's really the bottom line, is where your audience is and where your footprint is, how much I think there's a term for it and I can't think of it right now, where your like your reach or whatever,
okay.
your ability to where your audience can grow. And for me, like, I'm a family friendly streamer, which is there's not too many people that say it out loud that they're family friendly. And when I say family friendly, I mean, 13 and up, the typical Magic the Gathering audience. I don't curse, but and I keep my chat very, very much in those lines. I have a high amount of moderation when it comes to words. And it's not because I'm afraid of words, but I want to have a place where people can, like, I've had a lot of parents sit down their kid in front of my stream and they feel comfortable. They don't feel like they have to worry about me going off the rails on some rant and using, foul language. And again, it's not because I'm judging it. I just want to be a place where it can be, safe or whatever you want to call it. And some streamers, like, sometimes that makes people feel it's less, like if you go to any card shop or game store, people are probably going to say bad words in just real life, right? Yeah, just it's gonna happen. So I don't think that it's ever affected my numbers. No one's ever said, "Oh, darn it, I can't say bad words here. I'm out of here." No one's ever felt that way, at least to my knowledge. If they haven't, if they've left because of that, that seems really strange. A strange thing to be offended by. But I guess it does. It defines me in a way, right? It defines my audience in a way. So I don't know. I mean, I think I'm really trying to. There's not a perfect formula. I think the best formula is to stick with it and to be true to your brand. And if you want to grow, find out. There are definite ways to reach out. Be proactive. Don't sit there and wait for someone to email you and say, "Hey, you're great. Can we sponsor you?" This is never going to happen.
No, it doesn't.
It doesn't. Got to go after it.
Yep. That's one thing I quickly learned doing the podcast, because when I was like 10 episodes in and I had decent downloads and all that, and thinking, oh yeah, the sponsors are going to start coming. Nope. I had to reach out to so many people until I finally got that one yes. I don't know how many no's. And you bring up a good point where when you're not streaming and even, podcasts, right? Even when I'm not recording a podcast, there's still a lot of work going on behind the scenes. And there's just a lot of networking. There's interacting on Twitter. And I think there's also maybe a misconception when you're on social media a lot and just even interacting, with people feels like it's not work per se. I mean, it's not. I don't want to say like, oh, all my interactions on Twitter are fake or anything like that, but it's also, I'm trying to show people that I'm genuine. When I do self-promote my stuff, that I'm just not self-promoting. No, I actually do interact with people on Twitter and on Instagram and all that. And I mean, that's part of networking too, and it's on top of all the other crap that goes on behind the scenes.
That's excellent. And then, like when I talked earlier about letting people self-promote, one of the tenets, the main core tenets of that, being generous and giving people, that I think is a little bit. I've had some interesting conversations. I'll throw it out to you and let me know what you think. Okay. There are a couple of ways of thinking when it comes to providing. Letting someone, opening the door to someone. So let me put these in the perspective for you. If I were to have a business arrangement and say, okay, I'm going to give, promote this thing if you will also promote my thing. Like I'll give you a follow if you follow me. The follow for follow idea is a transactional opportunity where you're giving something in order to get something in return. And I personally think that is, although in business you think that makes perfect sense, it's logical to our human brains. If I do something for you, you do something for me. That's, hey, we're exchanging and therefore we're cooperating with each other. However, I don't believe in that at all. I believe in actually giving without any expectation of a return thing. So I will, if you have a need, or if you ask for something, I'll gladly say, of course, I'll do that for you. And my brain never goes to, well, I did you a favor, so now where's my favor in return? I'd simply throw it out there, offer. Now, if someone takes advantage of that and I give and give and give opportunities, and then I realize that they're just coming to me more often for those opportunities, then I might be more, not reluctant, but I might be have just I understand the relationship and what is happening, so I'm aware of it, and then I can adjust, accordingly. Now the more extreme opposite version of that is always asking for people for favors, like, hey, can you raid me when you finish your stream? Can you raid my stream? And not ever returning any favors, but just asking people for favors.
Yeah.
And you can definitely tell when that kind of person is around that there's never any intention of, they're just taking. And of course, we can all agree that kind of person is not the person that you typically would support, because you really quickly know that they're not there for a community. They're just there to take.
And boost their numbers and all that.
And boost their numbers and do everything they can to spike that up. And you can very quickly tell, because the minute you ask something of them, they shut you down. Mm-hmm. And so the three I don't know if they're personality types, just aspects of generosity. I think that most people will naturally go towards the middle one, which is the give and take. But I think if you change that perspective, you never get disappointed. I'm never disappointed when someone doesn't raid my stream. I'm never disappointed when someone doesn't say, hey, thanks for that, shout out or whatever. Like I generally never even care if I get. Now, when people do go out of their way to, shout me out in a post or say thanks for raiding me, or even stop by and raid me in return, all those things are bonuses and they feel great. And I appreciate everybody, but I never ask for it, and I never expect anybody to return the favors that I give. And I think that's kind of a cool place to be, because I'm always genuinely excited about the community building, and people, I think, naturally feel it. They feel like of all the games, and I haven't been a streamer for all of them, but I've heard a lot of different streamers say the Magic community is so welcoming and great, and we do a great job self-promoting, or not self-promoting, but promoting each other, especially the smaller streamers as they rise up, getting people excited about going to see someone stream. might be lower in the numbers, but they have a great personality and they're just fun. I love watching streamers grow. It's and I've been really lucky. I've actually met some of the streamers when they first started, like Voxy, Muffin Pastry Pie was one of the streamers that I went into, and she was just streaming off her headset in a small room, and she was asking about what mic she should use, and then she was in the Mythic Championship, a couple months later. It was crazy to watch people, from literally just starting the game even, and then grow into some of the bigger streamers now has been a blast for me. So I love watching that growth and that prosperity and what people get, the audience that they can attract. But for me, that simple fact of generosity without expecting anything back, for me, was a big reason that I believe that I both watched success and I grew as well with that mindset.
And that's good to hear. It's I try to do something similar. I definitely don't probably do it as much as I used to. Is definitely try to help the smaller content creators. I mean, I'll be honest, I'm not a big content creator by any means or anything, but it's one of the things that I always want to try to help out with is help smaller ones out. And whether that's just by retweeting their stuff or giving them, a subscription on YouTube, or giving them, or if they ask my advice on, like, hey, what'd you think of this video type thing? I'll gladly try to do it if I have the time. And it's something, because I understand. I've been there. I feel like I'm comfortable with my brand at this point to where I know what my podcast is and isn't at this point. I feel like I've grown and I've settled to where I want it to be. I mean, obviously I still want it to be bigger, of course. And, but I have to be realistic with my time commitment on it because of, my job and family. And so it's, I that's part of what my other tweet was trying to get some newer content creators out there, like such as yourself. I consider you newer.
I agree.
And it's also maybe try to get some smaller ones out there to just to, even if that gives them a little bit of a boost and it's not much, but it gives them that confidence and all that. Hey, that's awesome.
Right.
I'm glad I could provide that, for them. And, that gets me excited to help out as well, too. One of the things I wanted to ask you, and I think you briefly sort of mentioned it. So you mentioned you've been playing Magic since '93. Have you always been a competitive player, or what's sort of been your Magic journey?
Oh, wow. That's a really good one. Yes. So I started, I was really lucky to start Magic in Southern California. There was a couple game stores that were sort of the home of many of the early players, the early competitive scene. And so I was there when they were learning the game and kind of, getting their getting the strategies of what makes Magic competitive. It was way before the first Pro Tour, but
was that during Alpha, Beta, and all that?
Yeah. Arabian Nights had just come out when I was starting to play, and then I believe the first, I want to say Antiquities was out when the first Pro Tour occurred. So a lot of there's millstones and but the Library of Alexandria, and there's just a lot of core OG cards. But so I played casually with friends first in kitchen table Magic where we didn't know the rules, and then we started going to the game store, and there wasn't necessarily judges, but there was still a structure, and the people around you, you did play the game at a higher level, and it was about winning. So when I would go, I quickly learned that the type of Magic that I was getting into or that I was interested in, that going to the local store and then trying to win that whatever the store credit was, $50 store credit, was really important, because then you'd buy more packs and get more cards, and you could get you could make your deck better. And so going to the game store on Friday and having the whole week to tune up my deck was a very different experience. My kitchen table friends started disliking playing with me because I would try to end the game in 3 turns, and they were like, "Hey, we're trying to play Magic. We're trying to enjoy ourselves with these playing pirate ship in your deck was a fun thing to do, but you'd never dream of putting that in a competitive deck."
When you started, did they have the you can only have 4 of a single card in the deck yet?
I played a couple tournaments where that wasn't the case, and I played Howling Mines, Black Vice, and what was the other kill card? So I was basically filling your hand up and then killing you with Vice. I think it was Soul Rings. Yeah, it was Soul Rings. And yeah, there was no limit. So it was 10 Soul Rings.
Oh my god.
20 Black
That's
Vices.
Awesome.
And 10 Howling Mines or whatever, and a couple of but it would just spin off into this completely ridiculous. Some people were doing lotuses and bolts, and 5 bolts to the face, and then drawing more cards. It was just it was really wide open. So yeah, I played a couple of those unrestricted tournaments, and then they started developing only 1 lotus in each deck and 1 channel and 1 fireball, or you could have 4 fireballs, I think, but channel and I think lotus and channel were restricted. But yeah, those were definitely interesting and fun days of Magic, exploring what made competitive decks different. But I wasn't a competitive human being. Like, it's not in my nature. My gaming style is very much more of a story-based role-playing style. And I often tell the story about my original gaming experience when I was really young. Was my grandmother would play board games with me right before bed, and it would always be, when this game's over, you're going to bed. And so my strategy was always prolonging the game as much as possible. I didn't want to win and I didn't want to lose. I just didn't want to go to bed. So all the things that I would do in the games were to, knock my grandmother's piece back 3 spaces, or to block her from her winning the game. So it was a very different mentality when you're trying to prolong a game than it is when you're trying to win a game. And I feel that that it's important, because now in Magic I often miss lethal, and it's because my brain isn't wired for lethal. My brain's wired for, let's take 5 more turns. So it's definitely an interesting self-observation. You have to know why you're doing the things you're doing and why you're making decisions you're making. And a competitive game, I have to be very focused on what I'm doing in the game and how I'm going to win the game, and it has to be very clear, and I have to be very I have to put myself in that mindset. So I was competitive from 93, kind of casual, game shops. By the time I moved here to Vegas, I was really trying hard to get on the Pro Tour. That was 95, 6, and 7. And I actually made nationals twice in a row. So I won my regional, the regional invitation for the Southwest. I went to, it was in, where was it? Columbus, Ohio. What convention is that? Was it Gen Con, I think? I don't remember. For some reason it's slipping my mind. All right.
Yeah,
well, one of those, wherever nationals, US nationals was in 96, I was there. I believe that was the junior pro tour as well. So John Finkel was there at age 16. I know that Covert Go Blue, who is another streamer, he was at that event as well. He was on the junior pro tour as a young man. So it was really cool to be part of those original, competitive events. So I didn't do well at the national competition, but I was there. I earned my spot. I felt that was my highest, achievement on as far as competitive. Then the next year, back to back, I didn't get the regional spot, but I went to, a lot of my friends had been invited, so I went to Columbus again, and I actually won a grinder, which was the last chance to get into the nationals competition. Mm-hmm. They played a bunch of they call them grinders, and they just run them every 4 hours, and you queue up and you have to go undefeated. And I went 9-0 with a red deck.
Oh wow!
It was old school Viashino, Sandstalker, Ball Lightnings,
Oh wow.
Fire Blast, Mog Fanatic. It was a blast to run. It was so fast and so powerful. It came out of nowhere. Um, the big deck of the weekend was Counterpost, all kinds of draw go sort of
Yeah.
white blue control that was really powerful, but it was also big brained. And when you're doing a grinder, the last minute grinder, there were so many people that were just so tired of playing Magic. You could see it in their eyes, and I was just tearing them up with. I would sit down, and then I'd be walking up to the judges, and the first few rounds, the guys would be like, "Oh, you have a question?" I said, "No, my question is, where do I turn in this slip?" And they were like, "Whoa." Like literally people were still shuffling, and I was winning so quickly.
Oh
Um,
wow.
and at that point, I just started getting up, and they're like, "Yep, put your win list right over there." And I'm like, "No problem." And it was just, it was a joke. I was tearing through people so quickly, and yeah, I went 9-0. And then the funny part about feeling so confident and feeling I was on top of the world, everything fell apart when I actually got to the competition. I was literally probably last place. Um,
Oh
but
dang.
it was a great experience though. It was
Yeah.
fun to be there, and the highs and lows of Magic and competitive Magic and paper is really really exciting. And I got to see, like I said, some of the best players in the world. Randy Buehler was there with his Necro deck. Um, the list of players that I met in the competitive Magic scene was really long, and I'm lucky to have been part of it for so long. But I was never on the Pro Tour, and that was like my claim to fame was 2 back-to-back nationals, just getting there. But
Nice.
yeah, that's kind of where it was. And then after that, I life and family and had a kid, all these things, and that's the turning point back to Arena, is where I think it exposes Magic to players that have families and lives, and
Yes.
they can't go to the game store, right? So Arena does give an opportunity for players to either return to a game that they loved, but they can't go to the game store anymore, or they're just not in that place in life, and you can still be competitive. You can still have a great time casually. There are avenues to improving your game and getting on these big, huge money tournaments. It takes a lot of work though and a lot of effort, but Arena opened that door to so many different players. So that's where
Yes.
I'm excited about that.
No, I'm so, because I used to be. I mean, the reason I started this podcast was to really sort of journal my travels of going from kitchen player to competitive, and I thought I
Mhm.
really wanted to be competitive, and then life and time hits you in the face.
Right.
And one of the things that one of my favorite formats is standard. I love standard, but as we all know, it can get super expensive to keep up with it,
Hmm.
and that is where Magic Arena is perfect for someone like me, since I love standard and I don't get to go out and play Magic all the time.
Yeah.
Pretty much the only paper formats I even play now are Commander and Cube.
Yep.
So I pretty much stopped playing standard completely when Ravnica Allegiance came out. Paper standard, I should say, and have just been pretty much playing standard on nothing but Magic Arena. And like you said, it's perfect. I can log on to the game at 2 a.m. in the morning if I wanted to, and get like 10 matches of standard in and feel fine.
Right. Yep. It's great. I agree. And I'm the same way. I play Commander if I do play paper. The last event in Vegas, the Magic Fest, I did a few side tournament drafts or something just for fun, but I spent
Hmm.
my time in that command zone. And if you're anywhere near Magic Fest, the command zone is such a fun place to meet people and have some great games of Commander. And I fell in love with the format. I knew about it for years. I played it on MTGO, but it was never the same
Yeah, it's really
as
not the same on there
yeah,
at all.
yeah, yeah. The interaction and the casual board game feel and the I just really fell in love with the format, the wheeling and dealing and all the politics and the the casual feel of Magic is something that Commander is really exciting. I think that's one of the most interesting formats on paper. But I only have one deck and a couple of the precons. But I'm really confident that the precons give you that same feel.
Oh
Um,
yeah.
and they're well tuned and they're interesting. was really excited about this last batch of precons, and the new ones. Hoping are. I know that the team that's behind it is really in love with the game, so I feel confident that they're going to build a very well balanced and interesting interacting commander decks, and that's a great place for people to start too.
Oh yeah, no, I'm pretty excited about the Ikoria ones. I'm actually going to Magic Fest West Palm Beach next month, and I haven't been to a Magic Fest since Magic Fest Tampa last year, and I was only there for a couple hours to sell a big chunk of my collection.
Yeah.
And they didn't even have the command zone yet, because I don't think the command zone, they started doing that late last year, I think.
Yeah. Yep, they did.
And so I'm pretty excited. I'm going to try to make my way to Magic Fest Vegas, hopefully, this year. Because I try to do at least 2 Magic Fests a year. And
Cool.
lately...
Vegas?
Yeah, I really want to go to Vegas. I hope so.
Fingers crossed. Yeah, absolutely. I know that there's a few... Obviously, a lot of the streamers you go, but there's always we try to do meetups and be really... It's really exciting. It's one of the most fun things. So yeah, absolutely. Keep me posted on all the travel information. I think that I'm definitely going to TwitchCon this year, and Magic Fest Vegas I think is the only one I'm going to travel to because I don't have to travel. I live here in Vegas.
Yeah, no, that's super easy
how convenient.
For you. Yeah.
Yeah.
I know, the biggest Magic Fest of the year. You're right there, so
right.
Makes it easy. No, if I do go, because my wife and we try to do a vacation once a year, and we went to Vegas last year for our 10-year wedding anniversary, and so we feel like we didn't have enough time to experience Vegas. We were only there for like 3.5 days, so we want to go again this year. But if we do end up going, we'll come there on like a Monday or Tuesday, and she has no interest in going to Magic Fest Vegas, so she told me, like, we'll have Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and possibly Friday together, and then I just go off and do my thing at Magic Fest Vegas if we go.
Yeah, that's cool.
So, because she's got friends in Vegas, so she can just hang out with them on the weekend and all that.
Right, and you'll spend at the event. That's great. Yeah. Hopefully that'll work out. That sounds like
I'm hoping.
Plan. Awesome.
But so one thing I want to bring up, and I'd be remiss if I don't. You mentioned D&D, and
yes.
So I gotta know, let's just talk D&D. When did you start? Are you still playing? Do you DM? Do you play? Let's go with the whole gambit here.
Okay. So I do. I used to DM my campaigns with my roommates and friends, and that's where I love to be: game mastering, dungeon mastering. I started out, actually, the very first role playing game was D&D, and it was absolutely amazing. I remember I started, I think, with a gnome, but because I didn't know what they were, I thought it was neat. And then I ended up with a ranger, and it was the old school. I think rangers had to be humans, and or maybe I was a half elf. I don't know. It was just so it just opened the whole idea, the whole genre of fantasy role playing was blowing my mind. I never knew that it was a thing, and as soon as I got involved in it, and I opened my first module and looked at it was the world of Greyhawk, way back in OG D&D, which I don't even think Greyhawk is licensed under Wizards anymore, or I think it's a split off. But that was the original D&D content that I was consuming, and
mine was Dragonlance. I freaking fell in love with Dragonlance.
Yeah, that was later for me. Dragonlance was a big deal. Forgotten Realms, of course, reading the books and getting into that, and then of course Forgotten Realms is kind of where it's at right now. But yeah, Dragonlance is fantastic. Yeah, do you think they Dragonlance? I remember I ran a Kinder, and I had the most fun role playing that character because Tasselhoff was amazing. And yeah, there's I have so much love for role playing in general. But yeah, it started really early for me with that, and I was DMing. I'm pretty sure it was a Forgotten Realms campaign, but I was really, I'd loved creating my own worlds and creating my own. It's nice to have source material, but at the same time, I think that there was a certain magic in not knowing how things worked. And I remember the very first, D&D games where you ran into a gelatinous cube and you were like, okay, is this the one that we can hit with sharp objects, or do we need blunt weapons, or is it fire, is it acid? And just going through that figuring it out, it was like not knowing what a beholder was and not knowing how its eye stalks worked. And I don't know, it just, there were so many really fun memories of really early D&D that I think sort of gets lost now because of the, the amount of knowledge people have, the ability to look at source material. And so my current campaign is in my own world, and I very intentionally change things, the behavior of monsters, the behavior of things. I do that intentionally because
I do the same exact thing in my world too. Because just for example, in my world, drow are not inherently evil.
Cool.
Drow actually live above the surface. I mean, it's you can find them under the mountains, but they live on the surface as well too. And it's actually high elves and wood elves are more evil than drows in my world.
That's cool. I like that stuff. Yeah, and that's exactly, I think, changing giving players the experience that is, interesting is more important than, following some sort of rule book or some sort of a trope that's been developed. So I believe the same sort of stuff in my world, like, orcs and half orcs and the less human demi-humans are welcome, and they have thriving businesses, and it's not not this segregation or whatever of racial bias. Elves can interact with orcs and sit at the same table and eat food and not be offended by cultural mannerisms. My world is very much more open to the real threats, which are the undead and the creatures that are trying to eat the flesh of the living. I think are a little more. You have to be worried more about them than you have to be worried about your different tribes of wood elves and whatever. But I agree with you. I think it's fun to explore those, change things up, make the unexpected happen. And I think that's where world building is really cool. But yeah, I've been playing. I actually took a long break from D&D when they started switching to all the other versions. I tried to play them and really was put off.
Did you start with the first advanced D&D, the first one?
Oh yeah, I played original Advanced Dungeons and Dragons, and then second edition, and then
second is where I started.
Yeah, second edition is great. And then they sort of went off on weird tactical challenge, like some of the ways that they developed the game to make them feel like an MMO or whatever, the daily powers.
That was more fourth edition, and third edition I know is like the most popular, or was until fifth edition came out.
Yeah, fifth edition feels more like the original D&D to me. Gives you a little more freedom.
It's have you looked into Pathfinder at all?
I haven't. I heard so many good things about it, and it felt like it's something I would be naturally interested in, but I just never, during that phase, I just never bought the source material and never really did it. But I've heard so many good things.
So I don't really know anything about Pathfinder first edition, except it's very, according to a lot of people, it's very similar to 3.5. D&D. So, but I just recently got the second edition Pathfinder source book.
Okay.
And now don't get me wrong, I love D&D 5th edition, but I feel like as a DM, and maybe you can understand this too, but as a DM and even sometimes as a player, I feel like there's too much stuff in 5th edition that's up to DM's discretion. And I feel like I wish there were a little bit more rules just on certain stuff, and it's hard to say on what until you come across that situation in your game. Like, I can't even give an example because there's just so much. You probably know what I mean. Like, there's something that happens, one of your players wants to do. There's no rules for it at all, so you just sort of have to make it up on the spot. Where Pathfinder gives you, looking over the rules, there's a lot of this stuff where it's like, oh, I wish D&D had this. And you sort of use the rules based off that. So it's very interesting. I definitely recommend just reading the source book and all that. It's the customization player characters can do. Holy crap.
That's nice.
Makes D&D 5th edition pale in comparison.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting. I've been through both sides of that gaming perspective. The games that are so detailed that the rules are just these volumes, and they cover everything, and you have a base, as long you feel like you have a reference point, and you can always go there to find how this works. And then the other end, there's these wide open, I think it's up to the players, and players can abuse those wide open situations. And sometimes when you're always making things up on the spot, then you have a problem with consistency. Like, well, last time we did this. And and so I think that I personally like the fluidity of making calls, because I make the calls realistic, or even sometimes it's just about the dice. What are the dice? How are the dice going to determine this action? And it's sometimes hard to role play, because someone might have a fantastic idea that is so good that you just say, okay, it works, and there's no dice involved. Because sometimes the dice ruin those moments where someone has they really go outside of their, they find a really cool and creative place to be.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh, the dice say no. And that can feel pretty bad when it's all up to die rolls. Then you're like, then the players don't even ask questions. They just roll the dice, and if I get high enough, then I'll make it up and make it look cool.
Yeah.
I think that's kind of a dangerous place to be too, where you're just, you're not even caring anymore, because the dice will dictate everything. But on the other, so the game system that I actually fell in love with way back in the day was something called the Hero system. I don't know if you've heard of Champions. It was a pen and paper superhero role-playing game. And the system that they used really caught my attention, because it was a lot more stats, like 18 or maybe it was 15 or 13 stats. And those stats were so much more diverse, and they locked into my brain so much easier than the D&D stats did, that I was like, oh, I get it. Like for Champions, there was a hit roll, because you had to make contact with your target, and then there was defenses after the hit roll. And that to me made so much more sense than armor class, because I couldn't ever get in my head how a knight or a dwarf with thick mithril armor had an armor class of whatever, and then a thief or rogue with lightning cat-like reflexes and avoiding the damage. To me, it felt like two separate things. But in D&D, it only was just, hey, it's your armor class. And so the Champions or the Hero system broke down, being hit and then being tough, and handling the hit once you were hit or weren't hit. So I think that, and then also it broke it down so many other physical and energy attacks, and it broke down your psionic, or mental abilities, your mental strength, your it had wisdom and intelligence, and it just felt more logical to me. So I fell in love with that system. They of course had various game systems, like it went from superheroes to espionage, sort of, spies, because I think Top Secret was a popular game at one point where you were a spy, and then they had a like a pulp sort of it's sort of like an Indiana Jones feel, like
okay.
That sort of
like
adventure, action adventure themed. Then they did a fantasy hero, which was their version of D&D. Their and anyways, I really got into that game system. So that game system sounds to me exactly like what you're talking about. It was flexible, but it was also very detailed. So you could make any skill, any science skill, for instance. So there was a list of suggestions, but the way they did their role-playing game is, when it came to powers or skills, you could just say, I have, I'm an undead scientist. I have undeadology, or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
And you would just say, I had that skill, and then you would assign points to it to give you a die roll. So if you had enough points, you'd get a 14 or less. A moderate amount of points, you'd have 11. If you were just barely dabbling in it, and I'm sorry, when I talk about the 8 or less, 14 or less, whatever, these are the skill. The game was based on 3d6 was your primary success die. You would have to roll low. So when you roll 3d6, the average is 9. So the game system was based on, if you had a very little knowledge of something, it was typically an 8 or less success rate. So you would roll your 3d6, and generally you'd have to roll pretty good to get 8 or less, and that was your success rate. And then as you go higher, 11 or less is going to happen more often because you're going to roll 9 on average. And then of course, so the reason I've liked that 3d6 die roll system is it felt a lot more, if you do the math of bell curves and all that stuff when it comes to rolling dice, a d20 is so swingy. I don't know how people love that system.
Yeah, it really.
It's like anything can happen. You either swing your sword wildly and chop off your own finger, or you nail someone perfectly in their visor with your sword. But the amount of complete random on a 5, you literally have 5% chance of any result. And that to me feels so unrealistic, because if I'm an archer and I'm trying to hit the bullseye, it's going to be a lot more often that I'm hitting the target close to the bullseye than I am wildly shooting my arrow off into space.
Yeah.
So to me, the 3d6 system, again, back to the formula or the rules of the game fitting into what feels logical and feels right. It felt like the outcomes and your skills and your powers really made sense, and you could build a character and go in a direction you wanted, and the dice could mess you up, but the averages were always strong. I don't know. I felt like that system was brilliant for that reason. And
I'd have to check it out. Yeah.
Yeah, it's not a popular system anymore. It's definitely not something that is even sold. I found some revised rules. They've changed things a lot. But it's unfortunately not a system that it's so, what is it called? Like it feels very min-maxy and grindy because there's so many stats and so many rolls.
Yeah.
The only reason I love it is because I played it for so long, so I know it like the back of my hand. But when I've tried to teach people, they look at the rule, they're like, this is a lot. So I don't know. But yeah, if you want to explore it, by all means. It's just an interesting, like how the rules and how the game mechanics affect the actual play experience, I think is really important. And because it has to be a solid enough system to be out of the way, but then really support the game when people try to do something. They have to understand what's happening, and they have to understand why why this die roll counts or what it means or whatever. But I think that sort of stuff is fascinating. Like the amount of people that are into games now that are new and need to be, that don't want to deal with rules. They come from computer games that do all the calculations for them. When I sit down in front of new players and I'm like, what's your dex? And they're like, oh, I don't know. Why does that apply to why does that give me bonuses to my, archery? It's like, okay. And then you have to go through very painstaking, how all these things work and how your skills add, and, you leveled up, so you'd get another proficiency. And they're like, why? It really blows their mind. So the system has to be simple, but yet still has to be there enough for people to, grasp it and then want to play again. And I know I think it's fascinating conversation, and I love, I just love it because I've been doing gaming in all those different levels for so long that I feel like some of the biggest challenges is just getting a simple rule set that players are going to understand. And I don't think 5th edition is actually that good at that. I think
that's one of my biggest complaints about 5th edition is once you learn the rules, it's pretty simple, but the layout of the player's handbook is terrible. In my opinion. It's there's too much flipping back and forth. That is one thing that I feel the Pathfinder 2nd edition book deals a lot better, is each chapter is very easy to determine what's what, and where you're going to learn what rule. It's like a 700-page book, but, if you need to learn about all your class's abilities, look at the class chapter. If you need to learn all about combat abilities, it's all in the combat chapter. And it just feels like it's easier to navigate, if that makes sense. And
I want to check it out. Sounds good.
The layout feels better. And that is definitely one of the weaknesses of 5th edition. And I've noticed that too with a lot of new players. That because I do, instead of doing F&M on Fridays, I do D&D on Friday nights. I DM at my LGS, and I also play there a couple nights as a player. And there's just too many times, and maybe it is today's culture. I mean, I don't even notice it with younger, newer players, but even players that are like my age in the young to mid 30s and all the early to mid 30s. It's same thing. They don't know anything. They expect the DM to teach them everything, which is fine, but it's also, you know, I kind of expect that sort of behavior maybe the first couple sessions if they really want to play. And then after that, it's sort of like, well, come on, start learning your class now. You know, you've played for a couple months now. You need to start learning your abilities. I can't remind you like what Magic Missile does every single week and all that. And it gets, I hate to say it gets frustrating, but it does get frustrating a little bit because it's just like the same thing over and over again.
Sure. No, I agree with you 100%. And I also think that sometimes when a new player comes in, because I've played for so many years, I get tired of the same, you know, of course they're excited. They don't know that the Warlock is the same Warlock. Like the amount of new players that play that same Warlock who have the book that whispers to them, and they're so excited about that moment. And I roll my eyes every time because I'm like, this guy is the same guy that everybody is. They're you know, they look back and forth and they're whispering to their book and they're feeling like they have some sort of mystic, this secret that no one else. I'm like, you're like every other Warlock.
And all they do is cast Eldritch Blast.
Right. Over and over and over.
That reminds me, there is an exact player on my Wednesday game that does just that. He, my DM, he's in my Friday game. But he does, he's doing like a homebrew Forgotten Realms campaign. It's like a mix of a bunch of the source books. But it's pretty fun though. It's and we had this guy join. He made a Warlock, and of course we're all trying to be like, you know, I wouldn't say completely lawful good, but for the most part good or neutral and all that. And he comes in, well, I'm going to be, you know, like lawful evil or something, and I'm going to be in my Warlock. He was summoned by Asmodeus and all this. That we're just like, oh my god, and it wasn't so much that. I don't have a problem with that as long as it was role played well, but he's gotten way better over the course of a year because he's actually stuck with it for a year. But at the beginning, he was just absolutely terrible. He would we'd be in a fight in a cave, and like because pretty much we only really have two casters, the Warlock and a Sorcerer. Everybody else is kind of a martial class, so we were all ganging up on this group of orcs or whatever in a cave, and he literally cast the darkness spell on all of us, including the orcs, and we're like, everybody at the table got mad at him, like, why would you do that?
Right.
Now everybody that's there, we're all screwed now. Do you understand?
Right. There will be repercussions.
Yeah.
I think it's really, it is very interesting when someone tries to push either the alignment buttons and expect to, you know, meld in. And I guess as a you know, there was always Raceland, and there's always the characters that work well, but you have to find that there's character connections, you know, and I think that there's different types of players too. There's players that really immerse themselves into the roles, and there's other players that are just rolling dice and they just want outcomes, or they're, you know, murder hobos. They just want to just do something to impact the world and see how things happen. And I'm always like, you know, you don't just kill the shopkeeper because he doesn't want to buy your whatever.
Oh my! Speaking of that, I just literally had that in my Friday game. So it's I fear I've been playing the same campaign. It's a homebrew campaign set in my own world. I've been doing it for over a year now, and it's a world that I've had developed like since I was in college and all that.
Yeah,
and it's just slowly evolved over time.
Right,
and it's now gotten to a point to where my players, they're between levels 9 to 12, so they all think they're big, you know, badasses and all that.
Right.
And so I literally brought them into a town, and they went to the magic shop, and the magic shop owner was like a trickster wizard or something. Like he made a whole bunch of like goofball magic items.
Right.
And the paladin of the group got mad at him, thinking that he was trying to like cast a magic spell on him, and it was like threatening to kill him. And I had to tell him, like, dude, I know you're lawful neutral, but you're really pushing it at this point, like being evil, where he was trying to play a prank on you, and now you're threatening to kill him. Right. And he's like, no, but you know, he's my sworn enemy or something. I'm like, dude, you're really pushing it now.
Wow.
And it's getting to that point where I'm noticing they're getting all cocky. Because it wasn't like that at the lower levels, you know, like a little kobold would scare them at the lower levels and all that. Now it's I have to, and I happen to make the shopkeep because I had a feeling that they were going to try to steal from this wizard shopkeep. So I kind of made him quote unquote level 20 in the back of my mind, where like, okay, he's going to cast time stop, and he's just going to do some really powerful magic spell where he makes the entire shop go empty and steals all and brings all his stuff with him somewhere.
Yeah. No, that's interesting because because players don't know I feel the same thing. There definitely players get to a point where they want to push the buttons. I don't know why that happens, but they want to definitely explore their power level. And I've always had that, like, where the either the town guard or the captain of the guard will say something sternly, and the players just don't. But they're just like, "Yeah, you're just a guard," like,
or it'll take, "Oh, you offended me. Now I have to kill you."
Right? Like, is that serious? Yeah. Why take it to that level?
Gosh, yeah.
Just because you have a sword on your hip, why are you that? Why do things escalate that quickly? It's pretty interesting.
Yeah, it's funny because I'm noticing that, and I'm having to, and it's getting to a point where I've told them, like, now that you guys are getting higher levels, I'm going to have to make harder encounters now. Mm-hmm. And I actually, last Friday, sorry for just going on personal stuff here, but it's great. I think you'd enjoy it because so the previous week, they had just fought an adult white dragon that a Death Knight controlled. And they decided that it was a very hard battle. I have 7 players. Almost all of them went down except 2 of them, and they managed to take it out. I did not make it easy on them at all. And so I decided to give them some magic items. I allowed them to keep the Death Knight longsword, but I kind of made it a cursed item. And the barbarian wanted it really bad, so I told the barbarian, all right, well, it's cursed, and every time you decide to use that in battle, you're going to have a 35% chance to hit a non-hostile creature, one of your party members.
Ooh, wow.
And so I decided to make a rather easy encounter for them to try to boost up their confidence, to make them feel good, because a lot of them had just leveled up, and I wanted them to feel like, hey, we're big badasses now,
Right.
And so I made like this. They were camping out at night, and they were on their way to this town where the trickster wizard was, and so like a group of thieves decided to try to steal from their cart. They obviously found it and all that, and it was supposed to be a rather easy battle, but since the barbarian took the new cursed sword and rolled really, really bad, almost killed everybody in the group.
Wow.
It ended up being like almost a 3-hour battle because of that. I'm like, oh my God. It was not supposed to be that long. It was supposed to be like maybe 30, 45 minutes tops.
Wow. That's awesome. That's really cool.
They had to figure out a way to stop the barbarian. It was just hilarious.
Because he was just going hog wild with his new weapon. He didn't seem to care about hurting anybody.
Yeah. Fantastic. It was hilarious because he took down the Bladesong wizard, the paladin happened, and it was one of those nights. It's funny you mentioned the D20, like how you only have a 5% chance, on what you roll on. The paladin, literally, who's the strongest character besides the wizard, could not hit anything that night. He couldn't roll above a 5, and couldn't hit anything.
Yeah, that's my story of my life. I'm so bad at rolling.
Oh my God, and that's got to be a DM thing, because there are literally some nights as a DM where I cannot hit any of the players except one. Yeah. And they always feel like I'm targeting them. I'm like, dude, it's just the dice.
Yep. I've been there so many times. What is your opinion on concealed die rolls? Do you roll in front of the players, or do you roll behind a screen?
I roll behind the screen 99% of the time. And the reason for that is, and I'll be honest here. A lot of times my players think I don't try to be harsh or anything. I want my players to succeed. I want them to finish out this campaign and story. I don't want to do a team party kill at all. I mean, I've come super close to killing them all, and there are times where it's like, okay, I'll admit I fudge some of the rules because I don't want to kill them all, right?
Right. For the story. Yeah.
But and there are times I even fudge where I say I do hit them because maybe they're doing something dumb, and I'm just like, no, you need to get punished for this. But it's, for the most part, I roll behind the screen because it's I don't want to do a team party wipe. It's because to me that's not fun. I mean, if I was just out to kill my players, then why, I'll just have them fight beholders all day.
Right. No, it's interesting because I feel like I roll out in the open. However, I do think there's value to the story. I don't want the dice to determine everything, and I feel like the players do get really cocky because I'm rolling badly, and I think that maybe that's a good strategy.
Yeah, and for the most part, it's not often that I fudge the rolls or anything. It's because my players know when I'm rolling good or bad. And all that, because they can just see. I'd be the worst poker player ever.
Exactly.
Because they can just tell, like, when I'm rolling terrible on it. And it's funny because it's every week there's a new player that feels like I'm picking on them because I hit only them, and I can't hit anybody else.
Right. That's awesome. And so, remind me, are you playing? So you're playing Pathfinder now, or you're still playing 5th edition?
No, just D&D 5th edition. I'm just casually reading Pathfinder. I mean, I've already read the book, and there's just certain things that I really like about the system that I've sort of implemented into my game a little bit.
Gotcha. Okay.
Just some basic rule sets. Like an example, there's really no rules in D&D if. Let's take my paladin, for example, right? He wants to learn how to break into, pick locks, right? For whatever reason, there's really no rules based on D&D on how to do that. Like, if you want to learn a skill that's outside of the skills you've already learned.
Right. I think that's great.
And to me, that doesn't really make sense because, as you level up, as you advance, as you get older, you're going to have new skills as you progress.
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
So what Pathfinder does, I mean, the Pathfinder kind of does the same thing, but the way they do their skills is based on different proficiencies. So they do it based on, like, you're trained, you're an expert, you're a master, you're legendary at this skill. So I've sort of started to implement some of the same things. Like, if they want to learn how to pick locks, maybe they read a book on how to pick locks, or someone teaches them. And after so many times getting trained, all right, now you're trained on that skill and you have a +1 to picking locks, right?
Right.
Okay, but as you do it more and more and more, you're then going to gain a +2 up to a +4 as your legendary. So that's one thing I kind of like with Pathfinder. The other thing that I really like that Pathfinder does that I feel is very lacking in D&D 5th edition is crafting. It's just sort of like if you want to... So you want to spend some time crafting a sword or something, it's just sort of like, okay, roll, okay, you do it. That's it. There's a lot more rules to it in Pathfinder. And it also tells you what kind of materials you'll need for certain crafted items. And to me, that to me just adds another level of depth into the role playing, because you're like, okay, now I need to go to the store and buy some iron. I need to buy, some wood or leather, whatever, and...
That's really cool. Yeah, it definitely makes it more like that feels more like a progression of talents and skills that they can, and it's some place to spend their money too, because I know sometimes people collect gems and gold and they don't know what to do with it, so they go to the magic shop, or I think spending it on resources to improve things. That sounds really neat.
The other thing that I think you would probably appreciate as not only a DM but a player is just Pathfinder 2nd edition, the weapons they have in Pathfinder. There's so many basic weapons they have compared to 5th edition, and a lot of the weapons have a lot of different abilities. So when you look at 5th edition, they have there's versatile, finesse, what is it?
So basic though. Yeah, I know what you mean.
Yeah,
It's like, yeah,
I think it's just versatile and finesse, and then like how long you can throw it.
right.
In Pathfinder, they have a lot of different stuff. Like a dagger has the ability to, if you backstab someone as when you're sneak attack, it does a +1 to damage.
Okay.
As well. There's tripping weapons that you can use, so you can spend your action to try to trip the person to make them go prone.
Okay.
With that weapon. There's a bunch of other stuff too. Those are the two that pop up in my head. And
Yeah.
Just one other cool thing that I like with Pathfinder that I wish D&D had this, and I know, and this is where the DM's discretion does come up with D&D, is if you want to customize your weapon in Pathfinder, you can do it via a rune system, sort of like blessing or making your weapon into a magic weapon. So let's say you want to make your sword do fire damage or ice damage. Okay, you find the rune, you find a place who selling the runes or who can do it for you. Boom, you can get it done. And
cool.
And it's not just weapons, but you can do it for armor and shields. I mean, even the amount of shields they have in Pathfinder are way better than D&D, because in D&D you just have a shield, that's it.
Right.
Their shields in Pathfinder do a lot more different stuff. Like some shields only give you +1 to AC. Some of them you can just do complete cover with your shields, but you take an action for that.
Okay.
So
yeah, that's interesting. Shield wall sort of techniques.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that the creativity in combat is definitely with a more complex system. It encourages people to because I used to love, I still love, medieval weaponry and combat techniques, and knowing why a spear or halberd or a flail, the flail was designed to get over shields, and a game mechanic should imply that. Like, I'm using my flail, their shield is useless because that's the whole point. I'm swinging it and it's going over the top of their shield and smashing them. And those things are, when they're used in medieval combat and there's bonuses or there's like trips, like you said, that's great. I think that's really great. It makes there's a certain responsibility for the players to immerse themselves in the armor and weapons and attack techniques. I think it's fun. It really bores me when people I swing my sword. Like, I want more from the player. I want more about the attack, and I'll impact the actual combat. Like, sure, that's creative, or that's a great, you're definitely, if someone is going to jump on the table and then leap on their opponent to get that high ground, effect, and then bring their double, their two-handed battle axe down on them, that might be a dex check and then a bonus to attack, because they're doing something a little more creative and you're trying to take advantage of a situation. So I'll try to reward my players for the creativity, and then that of course spirals into more people trying more wacky things. But it makes the games fun. And I think if a rule set doesn't give you that, then you have to make it up. But if it does give you that, that's fantastic. So I do agree with you. I like back to the champions or the hero system, they had different base attacks. You could do just a regular attack with regular damage and no pluses or minuses, or you could do what they call the haymaker, which means you're pulling back and really putting everything into that shot. So it took you longer to execute it. So it would land on the end of the turn, and you would have minuses, I think, you would have minuses to your defense because you were basically standing in one place, reeling back for a big, powerful strike, but you do times 1.5 damage. So that was their way of saying, okay, we're going to let, melee characters, whatever weapon you're using, get a bigger bonus for planting your feet and really swinging hard. And there's nothing really in D&D that does that. It's just you swing your sword, same damage. There's no difference, even though we all know. Or a charging attack in the hero system, you could do move bys or move throughs. A move through, you ended your movement attacking the target. A move by was you were using your movement to quickly pass the target, strike on the way by. And again, it's all different variations of damage and your movement and how it impacts the dice at the end of the actual maneuver. but it felt to me like that made sense, right? Because if I had a sword, I could use my sword in so many different ways.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it wouldn't always be the most powerful attack. Maybe I'm trying to just, you know, pierce or, you know, poke, or maybe I'm trying to
Yep.
slice, you know, and depending on your armor and your technique and how fast you are, I might try a different tactic, overhand, or, you know, I don't know. It's just, I think that makes games so much more interesting when you can apply real life physics, or you can, you know, grasp you can feel and the action, and it's
Yeah.
based on what you're doing. And I think game systems have to really, it's pretty amazing how different game systems approach those things, and different groups of players can do it. But I'm really interested in this Pathfinder thing now. You've made me very curious
Yeah,
to go
no,
check out.
it's definitely worth checking out. And you know, you bring up a good point too. What you said earlier, a lot of it depends on your players, and
Hmm.
it's something that I, as a DM, try to inspire. You know, I mean, I'm not saying I'm perfect at it or anything. It's one of those where I try to get them excited about combat, because we all know combat can sometimes be boring and monotonous, especially at higher levels, because sometimes there's so many dice rolls happening, so many attacks on one person, or you have that one person who has no idea what to do during their turn and all
Right.
that, and it can be a little bit tedious. So I always try to get them like, okay, you slash him. How did you slash at him? Or
Right.
I take a little bit from Matt Mercer from Critical Role, like, all right, so how did you kill him? You know,
Right.
try to make
Right.
it exciting, interesting, you
Right.
know,
Right.
and not just, okay, slash, I kill them type thing.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
Because
I think that's the main goal, is to get your player interaction. And I've gone through a lot of different styles of DMing, and made a lot of mistakes, you know, with regard to, I can see the engagement just isn't there, and um, you know, how to pull that out of them is sometimes the most important thing, and it's something we all learn every time we do it.
oh yeah,
My new game is feels a little flat because I don't play it consistently. There's been a lot of breaks and time off, so
yeah.
it's hard to keep the momentum of the campaign, or the little plot devices that I've thrown in from the conversation with the innkeeper. Well, now it's literally 5 weeks later, and no one remembers that. You know, they're like, you
Yeah.
know, they don't know the name of the innkeeper. They don't know that he has a son that works, you know, for the guard, and they don't know what the interact. You know, like those important storylines that I think are developing my game world might not impact the players at all, because. So I think running a campaign successfully and having a group of players is not. Again, it's those things that they seem easy. When Matt Mercer does it, it seems like everybody can be the best DM ever, but it's a skill, and the ability to get the best out of the players is really, really fun and challenging, and it's a lot of work.
Well, let's be honest here. When it comes to Critical Role, the players are also doing a lot of work as well too. It's
Right.
it's. I mean,
Right.
I know Matt Mercer's in charge of the world and making the story and all that stuff, but if he just had players like some of the ones that I've seen, it would not
Yep.
nearly be as exciting as it is.
True.
And
True.
I've actually just started watching Critical Role, only the second campaign. I tried getting into the first one, couldn't really
Yeah.
do it.
Okay.
But I'm on like episode 9 or 10 of the second campaign, and I enjoy it. It can be fun.
Yeah. Yeah.
I will say I do enjoy the non-combat a lot more than, you know, I enjoy the role playing a lot more than the combat.
Right. It feels like their combat is just like, what in the world is happening? They're very, but their role playing is top notch. Their character immersion and their storylines, you know, like you said, they nail it because they're all professional actors. You know,
Yeah.
being a voice actor starts with your character development and understanding. You know, even if it's the Arby's commercial that you happen to be lucky enough to be the voice of, there's a lot that goes into that voice and that character. And you know, it doesn't have to be a video game. You know, obviously the video games, they give a lot more detail of the character
Yeah.
you're playing, but even the smallest role, you know, the 10-second spot of, hey, go to this movie, is, you know, knowing your audience, knowing who your voice is. There's so much more that you don't think about on the surface that impacts your ability to get that role or get that job. And people that embrace voice acting, or you know, and all of these everybody on Critical Role is a professional voice actor. They get that. They've already been through all the classes. They're still developing their ability to get in the mind and the creative space of a character. And then it shows as they play D&D, you don't even think about the die rolls. It's so secondary. Everything is about
Yeah.
the moments and the role playing, and then the die rolls are just there. And a lot of them, it blows my mind how long they've been playing D&D. They're still like, what do I do? Like, what die am I looking for? What do I
Oh
roll?
yeah. No,
And
I'm still the same way. Like, I've only been playing 5th edition since what, 2016, early 2017, I think.
yeah,
And I mean, and I've been only DMing 5th edition for about a year and a half. I think over 2 years now. And I mean, there's still so many times I forget rules. I mean, I don't
right.
remember every single magic spell does. I mean, I'm the same way with magic. I can't remember every single thing
Of course,
with
yeah.
it. It's
To
but
read the spell for sure.
yeah. But no, it's so I understand that. So do you get to play D&D at all?
No, I don't have a. Again, it comes down to the time and getting out to a shop, or getting out to someone who is running a game that I want to be part of. I love playing. I usually play like I usually find a very how do I put it? Like, I like to have my characters have a big personality impact, like something specific
Yeah.
that I can kind of sink my teeth into. And as a character, like I think when it comes down to this, it's like acting training. You have all these mundane things that we do every day, and those aren't interesting at all. But when something that's really out of the ordinary is what makes a scene or a role playing situation interesting. So I like to go for those out of the ordinary, wacky, wild things. So the last character that I really had fun with was he was elf nobility, but his because he was sheltered and lived in such a perfect world. One of the rites of or the coming of age story was the father and his royal council saying, okay, you're done here. You're going to go out in the world with no money, with nothing, and we're gonna throw you out. Put you on a horse and put you, halfway across the world, and you're going to start your life with nothing. And then he was an adventurer, but his attitude was of nobility, and he couldn't understand why people weren't serving him, hand
Yeah.
over foot. And so the idea there was he was this aloof, kind of a jerk to everybody, and everyone's like, you have no money, and that you're a nobody here. Why do you keep busting? But that was like a way of just kind of and he was doing it in a naive and innocent way. But at the same time, he was still kind of expecting, he was just entitled to everything around him. And I thought those kind of character choices, bold and very, he was impacting every conversation with his attitude. It was just fun. Those are the kind of characters I like to play. Something that's not just, hey, I'm here to adventure, and you know what I mean? Just
Yeah.
something bigger about their personality.
No, I definitely try to get into my characters. Like my Wednesday night group, I play a Ghostwise halfling monk who's
Oh,
a
nice.
drunken master. So we sort of all started off the campaign. It was only 4 of us, and we were all playing short people, 2 dwarves, actually 5 of us, 2 dwarves, 2 gnomes, and me, the halfling. So no one was above 4 feet or whatever.
That's great. Yeah.
And and that's how it was for a long time. And we tried to get all new players to start, like anybody who joined the campaign, because we played it at an LGS, to also do short players, and then
Yeah.
no one else wanted to do it. So
That's
so,
fantastic.
so it all kind of started off all of us being sort of like It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, the
Yeah.
characters in there. And so it slowly started to evolve into like all of us sort of had drinking problems and all that.
Yeah.
And then a very traumatic event happened to all of us. And so since my character's a drunken master, he's now quit alcohol completely. And
That's great.
me and the other character, me and one of the gnomes, and she's great. She's a great person. Our characters got married. She actually kind of forced me to get married to her character. And So she wants to consummate the marriage, but my character is a virgin and has no idea what to do.
Right.
And so
The monk, you know.
I'm all just like, and I don't play like the, studious monk and all this. I play like a goofball monk
Yeah.
who's super into martial arts and all that
Yeah.
as a kid and all that, and like
That's awesome.
learned from a wandering monk that used to came to town or whatever. And
Right.
so it's been adventures like that, and I can tell some of the other players get annoyed with us because the original players there were all super into role playing as well too, and some of them just want to do combat all the time.
Oh,
And so
yeah.
we're just sort of like, so I can understand why they might get mad because the DM does maybe play more to our backstories and all that stuff. And we've told the
Sure.
other players, like, when you guys don't come up with anything, what's the DM supposed to do? You
Right.
know?
Right. Yeah. That's a big factor um, in the experience. And I try to, when I sit down with them when they're building their character, one thing I try to do is get a thread or something about their lives or their background that I can weave into the
Yeah.
actual campaign. So that way they have, but you're right. If they don't take those threads, or if they don't input anything, then I end up just saying, okay, well, someone who is more enthusiastic or is trying really hard to get their backstory investigated or whatever, then I will, but it is an interesting balance that you try to provide the good story. And sometimes stories develop for certain characters that just kind of feel good and they work and that you're going with it.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, other players can feel like you're not focusing on their side of it as much. I think it's great though. I really wish I had more time. I know that there's a lot of people that play online with Skype or
It's
what.
not the same though. I've
Yeah,
tried. I've tried so many times trying to play over Roll20, and
right.
I've met some cool people doing it, but it's just really not the same. I honestly get bored
Yeah,
doing it
yeah,
online.
yeah. The access is the problem. I know
Yeah.
I have a local game store that's not too far, but I'd have to meet all new friends, and that seems so
Yeah,
tedious.
it can, and it's I'm lucky to have a really healthy D&D scene here. It's like I've tried hard building it up,
Nice.
um, and we've got D&D games going on every single night at my LGS, and sometimes there's 2 or 3 DMs a night doing
Wow,
separate
that's so
games.
cool.
So yeah, it's crazy like how much it's blown up, and it's thanks to Critical Role and all
Yeah,
that, and just
absolutely.
how popular D&D is going. And that's another thing that just amazes me, that how popular D&D has become and how accepted it's become. I mean, same with Magic as well too. I've said this so many times on the podcast, when I was growing up, it was all that
Yeah,
satanic panic of Magic and
right.
D&D, and you
It
know,
was.
you couldn't even play any of that without looking like a total cultist or something.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I was back in those days where you couldn't talk about it in school or anything.
Yep.
You'd be shunned away, and now it's embraced.
Yeah, the way I explain it to my kids, because they don't understand, is I tell them, back when I was going to school, you were considered a loser if you played video games. Like,
Right.
no
Yep.
one ever played video games, and if you did, you were a loser. But your friends who played video games, if they found out you played Magic or D&D, you were considered a loser in their eyes. So it
Right.
was sort of like this hierarchy of, oh, okay, the cool popular kids, the kids who played video games were losers, and then, oh, if they found out you played pen and paper games or tabletop games,
Yep.
oh my
Yep.
gosh, you were even
Yep.
more of a loser than they were.
Exactly.
And they don't
So
get
true.
it. They don't understand.
No, no, it's very different now. It's pretty
and,
interesting.
and it's great because my oldest daughter she was a part of a D&D club at school last year and played some D&D there, and we'll try and play at home here.
That's awesome.
And it's just me and the 2 girls, and my wife was a LARPer for a long
Oh,
time.
awesome. Oh, wow.
She used to LARP Vampire the Masquerade.
Yeah, that was my jam. I love that game.
I
It's so
haven't
funny.
played it in years and years. I think the last edition I played was second edition. I
It's
think it
so
was.
fun.
Um,
Yeah.
I'd love to play it again. I need to get the new rule books for it.
Yeah.
My shop just started carrying Call of Cthulhu, and I've always wanted to
Yeah.
play that. I've
Another
heard
great game.
nothing but great things about it, and so
Yeah.
I'm going to be picking up a player's handbook of that just to start diving into the rules for it.
That's so awesome. It's amazing. Hey, can I take a quick break? I need to go check on my dog.
Well, actually, let's just end it here. It is getting a little bit late for me here.
Okay. Yeah. No problem.
And well, first I just want to thank you for coming on. It's been a blast talking with you about streaming Magic and D&D. And thanks again for taking time out of your day for this. And where can people find you if they want to find your content?
AdamAntMTG at twitchtv.com. I don't really know exactly. I mean, I found some really strange. It's really hard to find me on YouTube. So if you go to my Twitch page, you can actually find me in the panels below.
Okay.
And I have a link to my YouTube and Twitter account. But the Twitch page is probably the best place to go. So
Okay.
AdamAntMTG ADA. There's not case sensitive, so should be easy to find. And yeah, I've had a amazing time. Thank you so much. I really love the D&D Pathfinder role-playing conversation. That was really a great turn because obviously I'm MTGA content creator, but it started with my love of role-playing. It really did.
Oh,
The
yeah.
reason I got into Magic was because of, it had those fantasy elements and it was quicker and, easy to play, but all those fantasy, playing elves and elvish archers and
Yep.
my first decks were based off of, and actually it's an old school thing, but my very first Magic deck was based on my cleric in second edition D&D. So
Oh,
I had
wow.
like Flame Strike and it was my fireball spell, and I used the Dancing Scimitar from Arabian Nights, and that was
That's
my blade
awesome.
barrier. That was my blade barrier. So I'd say I cast blade barrier and I dropped my Dancing Scimitar. So, and of course I had healing salves in my deck. It was red white, so Boros colors, and I had every spell that I cast or in Magic was based on a spell in D&D. So it was
That's awesome.
really fun, kind of. And it's so funny that now Wizards of the Coast and Dungeons and Dragons, they've melded together.
Yeah,
But back in those
with
days,
the Ravnica book and now with the Theros book coming out,
right?
I'm so excited about that.
Yeah, it's super exciting, and it's funny because that was where I started.
Yeah.
So the fact that it's coming to fruition now in the official capacity is blowing my mind, because that's exactly what I would build decks based on D&D characters. And
That's
so anyways,
hilarious.
it's really cool how it all kind of comes full circle. But yeah, thank you so much for having me. Thanks for the great conversation, and I look forward to. I have to go back to your library of content creators. You had mentioned Skybills because I met her
Yes.
at my very first.
I love her. She's great.
Yeah, she's such a great person. I met her when I was like, I think, streaming for like 5 months. So I was, barely affiliate. I went to my first TwitchCon. I ran into her. Didn't know who any of the streamers were. I was just trying to, make friends and meet people. And I got her a card. And then, and she was like, that's the other part. They're so welcoming and so kind, giving me tips on, I mean, I was sitting there with 20 people on my channel, and she's helping me, giving me tips, talking to me about streaming.
Yeah, she
Just
helped
fantastic.
me out. She convinced me to do a speed running stream, and I did a little speed run of Super Mario World a
That's so
couple
cool.
weeks ago, and I'm probably gonna do it again. I don't know when. I need to. That's my one thing with streaming is I don't have a set schedule, and and if I feel like if I set a schedule, then I'll feel obligated to do it, and then start
Right.
hating it.
Yeah, yep. I'm the same way. But I think you're right though. Just the people that are encouraging and give you the support and the confidence to get in there. I've been so happy with the community, and it's always nice to meet new people and realize that there's people starting and people that have been doing it for a while, and being just reaching out and meeting new people all the time. So you giving me this opportunity to meet your audience and people that don't know what I do. We didn't really talk too much about the real underlying theme or brand that I have that I feel is my. A matter of fact, I was about to end my stream yesterday, and then I got super motivated because all it takes is someone to come into my stream and say, "Hey, I'm new," and I'm all over it. I love the new player experience.
Well, I think you sort of showcased that because I mean, you talked a lot about new players and Magic, but you also sort of mentioned a lot in D&D as well too. And it seems like teaching is your big thing.
Yeah, I love it. Yeah. That's and I find myself not even like I think it's kind of a daunting task, to get into a conversation of how do you teach someone magic. There's not one place to start. There's so many places to start. So I try to be conversational with it, where I find out what the player needs or desires in a game. And I really feel that no matter what your background is, if you come into Magic, there's so many different ways to enjoy the game, and I love connecting that to the player. So yeah, that's usually, I guess that's my biggest piece of excitement. Is that's personally what I find rewarding, is getting someone to feel the same fascination. And it's, some people say it's a dangerous obsession because Magic will consume you, right? It'll consume your life and your energy. But if you have it, just, to me, it's just offers so much. And so does role playing. We talked about that, the amount of the storytelling and the value people can get from just coming together. I think you nailed it when you said it's all about that personal experience. And even though streaming is, across the internet, it's not as personal as going to your local game store and engaging people. You can impact a lot more people. So I think the reach that streaming has in that interaction is pretty good. But there are times where there's no new players out there, and I'm just talking to people that have played the game for a long time, and you have to change your tempo or your pace of streaming. You got to change your conversations, because you have to interact with who's in the chat at the time. But I do love new players. I think that's, if I could find a way to market or to get more new eyes on me, I think that's what would be my favorite thing. But right now, all we have is, word of mouth and, things like this, like the podcast. I can get, hopefully people interested in stopping by and just saying hi and walking through that process. So if anyone out there, I guess in closing, for people that are listening, if there's a player that maybe a friend or a family member isn't into Magic because maybe you're so immersed in it and they think that it's too complicated, because I've been there a lot of times with different games. If you send them my way, I try to do my best with answering the really, the initial questions and kind of taking that time and patience to get a new player comfortable with what Magic is all about. And I would love to do that for anybody you want to send my way. Just have them, tell them to say hi, and I will take them on the journey.
Sure. Yeah, no, for sure. And I hope anybody listening does take Adam on that, because just talking with you for these past 2 hours, I get the feeling that you do care. You genuinely care about, helping people out. And that's a good thing. It feels like it's rare to find like that nowadays.
Yeah, I mean, I think so. I think, and on the flip side, I think, there's always something that someone offers, even if it's not, expressed. I spend a lot of time thinking about how to be a better streamer, how to get more engagement and all those things. And I think it's important, to spend some time analyzing what you do well and what you might not do so well. And there have been times on my stream that maybe I'm too focused on, laddering or doing something competitive, and that takes time away from my ability to teach people, because I'm trying to play my best game. And it's really hard to, obviously, to focus on your best competitive plays when you're also answering questions, So there's a balance in everything, but hopefully my true joy is what I want to be there and streaming for, which is definitely helping. I think it's really rewarding to have someone come back in the chat and say, "Hey, I succeeded. I made it through.
Oh, that's awesome.
To gold this season, or my deck is working now that you gave me some tips on." It's like there's nothing better than that feeling of getting that confirmation or whatever affirmation that you're impacting people's lives. So it's wonderful.
No, that's awesome, man. Well, thank you again for coming on. It was a pleasure again, and maybe I'll have you come on again. Maybe just talk D&D strictly.
Yeah,
I feel like we could have another whole conversation just based on that. And no, but like I said, thank you again for coming on, and hope you have a great night. Okay.
Absolutely, you too, and thanks for everything. we'll definitely do this again. I'm had a great time. So just reach out anytime.
All right. Well, great. Thank you. Have a good night.
All right. Take care. You too.
Hey, everybody. Thank you for listening. I really hope you enjoyed the conversation. I really enjoyed the conversation with Adam there. It was really well done, and it seems like a very genuine, helpful guy out there. And hopefully you do end up checking out his stream. Make sure you follow him on Twitter at Adam_MTG. And make sure you check out his Twitch channel as well, too, at AdamAntMTG. And thank you all for listening again, and have a great night.